Mr. Grinder.
In fact, those pictures of the trial right there.
Yeah,
Again in the spring and joke about the weather. People who change oil and keep the motor running smoothly. They're Petro-Canada dealers, independent businessmen and women who know service brings the business in and service brings it back. Meet your local Petro-Canada dealer and discover your own Canadian name for good service. Petro-Canada, Canada's energy working for you.
Coming up next, Webster.
Good morning. Should Mary Hill Private Hospital in Port Coquitlam be closed? What it's been doing up to now is looking after the needs of a range of adult retarded from age 40 to age 90 or thereabouts. On yesterday's program with Grace McCarthy, there was a bit of a contretemps between spokesmen for the hospital, Margaret Varcoe, the matron, and also here this morning is Hal Salway, the administrator and the owner. We'll look into that this morning. But first off the top, we're going to look at what might be a nightmare or a sad story, and you may or may not have sympathy with a man, Barry Ackerman, a native of Calgary, about 32, lived in the Seychelles Peninsula, finishes up doing life in a jail in Thailand as a heroin trafficker. And I've got people here this morning who might say with some authority that he did not get a fair trial and that Canadian diplomats helped unfairly to put him in the bucket for life. And first, we're going to do the nightmare in Thailand after the break. The moment somebody's jailed for life for heroin trafficking, the public tends to have very little sympathy. And in this particular case, there's been quite a bit of publicity. The man's name is Barry Ackerman. And with me this morning, I have his sister, Lynette, correct? I have his lawyer, Bob Allan, and I have a close friend, Darlene Paulson. Now, the story you're going to tell, Bob Allan, is the kind of thing that if you saw on television you wouldn't believe. Is that correct?
Fairly accurate, yes.
And what you're going to tell me is a simple recounting of what happened to Ackerman and what happened to you, including an incident where you believe that they tried to frame you in Thailand.
Well, somebody tried, yeah.
Let's start at the beginning, Robert.
Well, the beginning was the Department of External Affairs called me on August 27th, 1979, and advised me I'd been requested to go to Thailand to act on behalf of Mr. Ackerman. Up until that time, the law firm I was then associated with had acted for Mr. Ackerman on corporate affairs only. As a result of that, I went to Thailand and arrived some 4 days after his arrest, and he was in a small local jail cell. At that time, I had a conversation with him and his co-accused, Mr. John Walker, and apparently Mr. Walker had made some type of confession, which he said was under duress. I saw the top of his mouth where they had advised me a .38 pistol had been put in their mouths, both Barry Ackerman and Mr. Walker. The top of their mouth was open and bleeding, and Mr. Walker had indicated he had made some type of confession under duress.
Kind of deal. He would confess, be treated lightly, and the weight of it would go on Ackerman, who wouldn't make a deal. Is that right?
As it was related to me, was not so much they would go lightly or make a deal. If they didn't confess, they'd kill him. Was the way it was put to me. Whether that's accurate or not, I have no knowledge. But
No, but that's what Ackerman told you.
and Walker as well.
Now, what were the circumstances? Perhaps I can go to Lynette, or Darlene, I'll go to this. What took Ackerman, we'll get back to his life imprisonment and where he is now for the moment anyway. What took him to Thailand in the first place?
Well, I know he'd been there several times before, and he'd had a house there and rented a house there. And he also had a business in France, I believe, in jewels that he import or export, I'm not sure. And he went primarily to see someone or visit someone, I'm not sure, but as far as meeting John Walker there, he had no knowledge that John was there.
Now, what happened to
He
him?
met him in a bar.
Who's going to tell me what happened to him in Thailand when he was first arrested?
I think Bob would be able to tell you.
Bob, Robert Allan.
Subsequent to his arrest or at the time of his arrest?
What was he doing in Thailand, and how come he was arrested as a major heroin trafficker, and how come the RCMP liaison officer got so deeply involved in it? Had they been following him from Canada?
Well, as I understand it, it's been related that it has been said that they were following him from Canada. But the actual evidence in the trial from Sergeant Ripley, who testified in the trial, and I was there during the trial, was that they were not following Barry Ackerman at all. They were following Mr. Walker. And they had a set up 2 or 3 RCMP officers, I forget now, I believe it was 3, had gone to Thailand as a result of information received, as they so eloquently put it, some several days before Mr. Walker arrived. And they were in the room next to Mr. Walker when Barry apparently walked in and was talking to him. And they took it from there. That's basically
And he was then arrested.
No, then they followed Mr. Walker and Mr. Ackerman. As I understand it, Mr. Ackerman had never met Mr. Walker before he met him in Bangkok. He had never met the man
Perhaps he
in his
was
life.
meeting him in a drug deal.
No, he'd indicated he had met the individual as a fellow traveler, a fellow Caucasian traveler in Thailand, and that's not too uncommon from my experience and probably Darlene's.
Right.
There's not that many people there, and you tend to sit around with them, whatever they may be doing. One couldn't really tell.
Right.
But what he advised me, that Mr. Walker, shortly after his arrival in Thailand, was rolled by one of the young ladies over there, and all his money was taken. And Barry had lent him some money, which was the reason he ended up staying so close to him to try and get it back.
Next step?
The next step is they stayed together several days. The police say they had intercepted their conversations in the hotel room. And, of course, we never saw any tape or any transcript of that, but Sergeant Ripley related what he had recalled the conversations to
And
me.
did he accuse in court Ackerman of being a major heroin trafficker from Canada?
Oh, I can't recall specifically his saying that, but I do recall Sergeant Ripley specifically stating that here is Mr. Ackerman's criminal record, which he related to the court in Thailand, and the fact of the matter was Barry had no criminal record.
This is a fact. You're saying evidence was given by an RCMP officer about a criminal record for Ackerman, and you can tell me from your knowledge that he has no criminal record at all.
No, what they said was a criminal record were charges that were never proceeded with against Barry.
In other words, there had been a number of charges against Barry in Canada.
There had been some charges, and indeed the individual that had charged Barry with a charge in Vancouver in the early 70s, I believe it was 1972, was oddly enough the liaison officer who authored those letters that are in dispute.
And you're
They had a
telling me-
personal bone to pick with him, as I understand it.
But you're telling me that Ackerman had never been
Convicted of any charge.
convicted. Had he been in court on drug charges?
He'd been charged but never convicted. They'd never proceeded with a trial against Barry Ackerman.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
They had some information against him, they considered charges, laid charges, but in some way or other they never came to trial.
They never came to trial because there was insufficient evidence.
And you're saying that that's, I suppose this is a civil liberties point one should look at, regardless of the true guilt or innocence of Ackerman, in that he was unfairly tried.
It's my opinion that the letters that are in discussion that have been published by the Toronto Globe Mail and the province here on the front page several weeks ago, that those letters sealed his fate.
Those were the letters sent by
the ambassador to Thailand, Mr. Bild, and the liaison. He's actually an attaché for the embassy, so he's part of the diplomatic corps, Corporal Ewing.
Yeah, a memo written, marked confidential, refers to him as a major narcotic trafficker in Canada, directly linked to shipments of so-and-so heroin, morphine powder, cocaine. However, there has been insufficient evidence to proceed with charges against Ackerman. He is considered a key person, the head of his own organization. What was wrong about that man writing that from the embassy?
Well, The embassy, as far as I understand it, and I'm no great expert on the law, diplomatic law, but as far as I understand it, the embassy is there to protect you and not make unsubstantiated allegations to a foreign government, especially a foreign government such as Thailand, which would in effect lock them up. There is no doubt from the tenor of those letters, and I've had them read by members of the diplomatic corps before this, or they were read by members of the diplomatic corps rather, that there's no doubt the tenor of those letters was in substance lock up Ackerman and that's it.
Lock him up and throw away the key.
Or shoot him, which is what he was facing.
Which is
He was facing a firing squad at the time those letters were written.
Oh, it's firing squad for...
It's death or life imprisonment. Those were the only two sentences that could have been imposed, and he was facing up until they gave him life imprisonment, a possible death sentence when those letters were written.
Lynette, it's not a fair question, but was your brother, even if he was not convicted, Philly, did you know or suspect he was big time in the drug trafficking business?
Never.
Do you believe it?
Do I believe that he
He
is?
was.
No.
You don't. How about you, Darlene?
No. I wanted to interject something else here when you were saying about where he was arrested and that. Barry wasn't anywhere near Mr. Walker when he was arrested. He was in a restaurant eating with this girlfriend that he had there. And John Walker was in a taxi cab when he was arrested with heroin strapped to his leg. And when John Walker was arrested, because I was there for the rest of the trial, John Walker was taken then to the police station, and then John Walker led them to his apartment. It wasn't a hotel room where he lived, and there was drugs. He led them to where the rest of the drugs were.
Did they find any drugs on Barry?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Barry was never even charged. He has not been formally charged in Thailand.
Well, how did he get life imprisonment if he hasn't even been charged?
That's the whole
Yes.
point.
It's an awful strange system they got
Yeah.
there.
In other words, it's a brutal system which doesn't have our checks and balances. And you say the checks and balances were overweighed by improper action of the Canadian Embassy.
The police.
That's how I would construe it. Well, it's the embassy as far as I'm concerned. That's the ambassador that said his attaché, Corporal Ewing, would act on his behalf. In effect, I don't have the letters here, so I may be somewhat inaccurate.
No, they're quoted accurately, I'm sure, in the Globe and Mail. More on Barry Ackerman, who's what, 10,000 miles away?
12,000.
12,000 in Thailand, after the break. It's kind of odd to be sitting here fighting in what's in effect a civil liberties case when there aren't the basic civil liberties in Thailand. This is the story of Barry Ackerman doing life imprisonment, never been charged,
No, as I understand it, never been formally
Not
charged.
formally
never been formally charged.
No.
Did he appear in a court?
Yes, he
And there was
charged.
evidence against him?
I never saw any. They
No,
just-
but
just-
evidence was given.
Evidence was given against him. Whether there was evidence against him
didn't
is
see
another
any.
issue.
When did you last see Barry, Darlene?
June the 23rd.
Tell me how he was and how he's being treated.
Very underfed. He's very skinny. In the prison that they moved him to, it is really bad. The only thing they ever checked me for when I went in there was a camera. He told me that he wouldn't tell me everything what it was like because he said I would freak out. Where he was sleeping, there was one man pressed right up against another. The first 5 days that Barry was in Bangkok, he had 12-kilo chains on his legs, and he was.
That's 25-pound chains.
That's right, and that was his biggest concern, was getting them off because he couldn't shower or anything else. Food has to be taken in every day. There's no food supplies at all by Thailand.
Well, you mean there's no food supplied in
That's
Bangkok
right,
prison?
that's right. You have
Where
to
is
pay for it.
Bangkok and which town?
It's it's a district just a little bit north of Bangkok proper.
So they don't feed them in prison?
No,
How do they
except
get
a
food?
bowl of rice sometimes. Well, their families or friends, and the foreigners, the money is sent in. You pay the guards a percentage of money that in your bank account, they arrange it all for you, or you can pay money into some of the stores and they deliver it once a week. What we've been doing is sending money to missionary friends there, and they've been going to see Barry, and that way we know for sure the money goes into his account, and he pays a percentage off to the guards for bringing food, aerograms, whatever. The paper is wrong when it says about electric fans. In the other prison, the men would have killed for a fan. There's no such thing as fans and things like that.
So
They're
the
not allowed.
graft and corruption is a formalized system?
Yes, it's very accepted in Thailand. They
Well,
say
that's-
that we have it here, but we just don't admit to it. You know, the
We don't
police-
have-
I'm
we-
just saying
yeah,
what the police and people say there. But I stayed with missionaries there, and I've had dinner with the American consulate, and we talked about these things. And it's true. Missionaries have been jailed for running over people who are committing suicide and put in jail. This one missionary that we know of was put in jail for 7 years, and man had committed suicide in front of his car. And they agreed to let him out if he would pay 7,000 American dollars, but he had to promise to leave his name in jail. I mean, that sort of thing goes on all
To
the time.
leave his what?
His name
Yeah.
in jail for 7 years. It
His
was
name in jail.
Yes, to save face so that they're not embarrassed. I mean, people get shot there. If a cab driver's coming around a corner and you're in a truck and this has happened, and no one will admit that it's his fault, he's in the wrong lane, people have been known to get out of their vehicles and shoot each other.
Yeah, but
You know, the
Barry,
incident with the Coke and the Pepsi was very common. It's a very common occurrence.
tell me about Barry. How long has he been in prison now?
Just 2 years in August, I believe. Isn't that right?
Is he a wealthy man, your brother?
No longer.
No longer. How much does it cost the family up to now?
Over $100,000.
How much?
Over $100,000.
That's legal fees, you're traveling back and forward, and you're paying the graft
Yes,
for...
and feeding him.
And
yes,
feeding him?
Yes.
What percentage of the money do they take for food?
When I was there, they were charging Barry, I think it was 20% on whatever, you know, and they only like American dollars, of course. And
You have a nightmare experience of your own to tell,
Well,
Robert
that's true.
Allan.
Yeah, the second time I went there in October '79, someone planted drugs in my suitcase.
Well, tell me about it.
Well, I went out that day and with Barry's Thai lawyer, with Tilaki Gibbons, his present lawyer, Weechai Panoy, and met with the captain of the local police department. And the Thai lawyer was, what he was exactly saying, I'm not sure because I don't speak fluent Thai. But we were discussing bail, which is the way they arrange bail there, and what could be done, what was possible to be done. And after I left that meeting and went back to my room in the Hyatt Rama Hotel, I opened up my suitcase to get the safety deposit box key. I never wore any jewelry or anything. I just wore shorts and a T-shirt there because if you have a ring on, somebody will walk up and kill you for it.
oh, yeah.
But quite frankly, so I was searching in my suitcase to get my safety deposit box key and had done my laundry the night before, sort of socks and that sort of thing, and I lifted it up like that, and lo and behold, there was a bag of pot in there. And it was quite obvious to me nobody was doing me any favors by putting that bag of pot in there. So I immediately phoned an Errol De Silva with Reuters News Service and related the time and exactly what went on. I then phoned the
That
law
was quite
firm.
sharp.
And I told him, and I said, if you hear this story again, it's not deja vu. I've been set up. Make sure somebody gets me out of here. But after that, for the next 5 days, I had a 7-man police guard to get me out of the country.
Now, you went to the Reuters. Who else did you talk to?
I phoned the embassy.
Travel tips for Thailand.
Travel tips for Thailand.
You phoned the Canadian embassy and
Don't
said
count
that
on the embassy.
they've planted drugs in my suitcase.
That's right.
What did you do with the drugs?
Threw him out the window.
Then and there,
Right on the spot. Opened the window and turfed him out.
so that nobody could break into the room and say you are now in possession.
Well, that's right. There was two ways this could have been done. First of all, if I'd phoned the police hanging onto a bag of pot, they would have come in and thrown me in jail.
Right.
That was the story there. So I got rid of it out the window and then phoned. And the police captain that came to see me and was in charge of guarding me from that point on, and he did. There was always at least 2 men watching me and following me. And 2 men outside my hotel room door who searched it every time before I walked in it.
Funny the police should cooperate with you to protect you.
Well, they're the ones who told me. I asked them, well, who do you think did this? And they said, well, there's only 2 ways this could have been done. It's a common practice for travelers in Thailand that the room boy or somebody like that will plant drugs in your suitcase, and then his friend, the local police officer, they bang on the door, come in, arrest you, and take every penny you got not to throw you in jail. That's a common
Just
practice.
to state what we would call the old badger game.
That's right.
In other words, what might not have been done because you were Ackerman's lawyer, but merely because you were an affluent-looking tourist, a good guy who might have a few traveler's checks in his pocket.
Possibly, but when I asked the captain, who the Thai police also moonlight as security guards for the Hyatt Hotel and the law firm I was associated with in Bangkok, they were the solicitors for the Hyatt Hotel. So when this happened, I got probably better service than most. But the captain, when I asked him, who do you think did this, he said, oh, it was probably Interpol. That was exactly what he said. His exact words to me,
In other
that
words,
was a
in your
common...
case, it might not have been the badger game, which is just entrapping somebody, but it might have been somebody involved with Ackerman's prosecution who thought, we'll get this smart aleck Canadian lawyer.
That's right. The way it was done was very, to my mind, clever. Whoever did that, it was not... I did drug cases for 6 years, and I recognized the marijuana that was planted in my suitcase was not Thai marijuana. It was Hawaiian marijuana. And whoever put that in there was just enough in there for them to throw me in jail for 5 days and deport me, scare the hell out of me, and get rid of me. It was a very... Whoever did this to me planned it very well.
And clean you out of your money,
That's right.
or your available jewelry or cash or whatever.
I think it was more done to get rid of me, scare me and get rid of me.
Can anything be done now for Barry? Or is it case over, finished, away for life?
Well, he has an appeal coming up sometime in November.
In a court of appeal
Yes.
in Bangkok. How will that go? Who will act for him?
Well, I have a very interesting thing to say about that. I received a letter at the end of August of this year from his lawyer, Wichai Panoy. And for filing Barry Ackerman's appeal in the Court of Appeal, he was hauled in front of the court and almost disbarred, was what he advised me. They took him before the court on a contempt charge because his wording was overly critical of the lower court.
The lawyer who filed the appeal was threatened with a contempt charge.
He was found in
Found
contempt.
in contempt.
And they gave him 6 months probation and a 500 baht fine, which only relates to 25 US dollars, but to him it's a lot of money. And he was
Incredible.
most worried about that.
Are you going back to Thailand to see Barry?
Only by the grace of God, and only, no, not, I can't afford it right now, and
Is that Barry cleaned out more or less after the 100,000?
Yes.
yes.
Of
yeah.
everything.
Oh, yeah.
Or what's going to happen if you don't send money?
Well, we're working, we have to.
Let's talk about what the Canadian Embassy or the Canadian External Affairs will or will not do after the break. There are all kinds of horror stories from all over the world, particularly Afghanistan and sometimes in South America and Southeast Asia, where Canadians are unwise enough to be associated with drugs finish up being starved to death, beaten to death, or ruined physically, mentally, and financially. But the average Canadian looks at this case, and I can see the point being made here. This Barry Ackerman was in Thailand. He didn't get a proper trial. Forms of evidence or so-called evidence were introduced which would never be introduced in this country.
Never be admitted as evidence.
Never be admitted as evidence in this country. But was he a drug trafficker?
I say no, I believe he's not. But even if he was a drug trafficker, he's still, any man is allowed to stay in court. And I really believe that if the Canadians, the police or the judicial systems insist that Barry was guilty, then why don't they bring him back to Canada and try him? The reason they won't is because there is no charges and because he's not guilty.
What makes this a different kind of story is that the Globe and Mail originally got copies of the letters written by the ambassador and by the RCMP liaison officer to the head of the Bangkok Police Commission, right? In which they, you might say, leaned quite heavily by calling him a major narcotic trafficker, a major professional heroin trafficker, linked to this. And they had received information that if Ackerman got bail, he would flee the country, and they better watch he doesn't get out. That was the effect of the letter. Now, what does the Canadian Embassy tell you, or the Canadian External Affairs Department tell you, or you?
Well, one thing they said to Barry's mother was when Barry had a tumor that had to be operated on, and they had moved him from what was called colloquially the Bombat Medical Facility, where there's probably more heroin in there than there ever is anywhere in the world, to Ladjao Prison. We asked him to be moved back to the medical facility for his operation. The Department of External Affairs advised Mrs. Ackerman, again this is hearsay because she told me, but advised her that they could not get involved in the internal affairs of a foreign country to help Barry in an operation before he was ever tried or his trial was over. Well, I can't help but ask what they were doing here if they're not getting involved in the internal affairs of a foreign country. The RCMP were over there before there was any crime even committed.
Well, that was when they were on the back of Walker, or somebody
On
was on the
Walker's
back
back,
of
yeah.
Walker. Interpol was on the back of Walker.
No, the RCMP were on the back of Walker. 3 RCMP officers from Vancouver.
Did Walker testify about Barry Ackerman?
Yes,
Yes.
he did.
What did he say?
He said that Barry Ackerman had nothing to do with it and that he was forced and coerced into signing. He almost passed out in court because he had tuberculosis. He was forced by the...
This is Walker?
Yes, he was forced by the Thai police to sign a piece of paper, a document saying that he did not, in fact, have tuberculosis. Barry had asked me to go to the Australian Embassy, which I did.
Walker was an Australian.
Yes, to ask the Australian Embassy, actually, if they would send a doctor out. And they were more than helpful. And the difference is like night and day between the treatment I got from the
You mean-
Australian Embassy and the Canadian Embassy. And they had a doctor there that afternoon and took x-rays and told him he had tuberculosis.
So Walker, when you went to the Australians on his behalf, they were
Yes.
instantly cooperative.
Yes, very much so.
When you went to the Canadians...
And they were also in court, excuse me. They were also in court during the trial. When I first went to the Canadian Embassy, it was because I wanted to, number one, why Barry didn't have someone other than me representing him in court from the Canadian Embassy, and number two, why his family was not informed that for 3 months he had not been receiving proper food or monies.
What did they do to you, the Canadian Embassy? How did they treat you?
First he charged me 40 baht for getting a letter to go see Barry, which Australian Embassy didn't charge me anything.
They charged you for
They
writing a
charged
letter
for
to
writing
get
a
into the
letter to
prison?
give me permission to go
Canadian
see him.
Embassy charged
Yes,
you.
they did.
How much was that?
40 baht, which is $2 American. I have the receipt still. And I got into an argument with Mr. Sanford because I said that he wasn't being fed. He said he was. And I said, I've been visiting. Are you going to tell me that the missionaries and people I'm staying with are lying to me? We really had it out. And I asked him why he wasn't in court. And he said, I have other things and cases and people to look after. He said, I can't spend all my time in court. I said, the last time Barry was in court was 3 months ago. So it can't be that you don't have enough time. There must be someone
Did the
send.
Canadian Embassy come to court at all to help him?
After that, they did. Mr. Sanford was there, and he was very gracious after that and was there. And
But meanwhile,
really
other
didn't give
people
me
in
a
the
reason.
embassy were writing to the Bangkok Police Commission saying,
Yeah.
hey, it's a major traffic.
well, what it is the interference in the evidence. I mean, we're not here to run down anybody's court system or the way they do it in their country. That's fine. But it's the interference of evidence of our police or through our embassy to their police.
Okay, now then, what's the score with the External Affairs Department? Have they just closed the book on you as the book has been closed on Ackerman, really? Ackerman.
Well, I'm not sure. I haven't dealt with the Department of External Affairs. I know the Toronto Globe and Mail have been in contact with them, and with Corporal Ewing, the then attaché to the Canadian Embassy. I personally haven't had any.
Mind you, you can't blame the embassy, I don't suppose, or the Canadian liaison officer for writing confidential letters, which were the beliefs which they probably didn't expect to see in court either.
No, but the very fact that the Toronto Globe and Mail has them shows how confidential and closely held to the chest those letters were.
Nothing is very confidential nowadays, is it?
Nothing in Thailand is
No.
confidential.
Anything can be bought.
Anything in Thailand can be bought.
That's right.
Anything.
You haven't been there.
No.
Don't go. Eh? Is Barry married?
No, he's not.
He's still got his place up at Seashell?
No.
All gone?
He has nothing.
Nothing.
All put on the block? To pay
And his family as well have put out virtually their life savings to do what they could too.
Doesn't the Canadian Embassy... Well, there's no prisoner exchange with Thailand, obviously, is there?
No.
Not yet, but there wasn't with Mexico either, and they now have one. So
But you could buy his way out of prison if you had enough money, could you?
sometimes there have been cases where I know of people who have gone over, one man in particular from the States who went over with $300,000 to get his son out, and they wouldn't let him go. And then went back a time later in the second court. First court in Thailand is always guilty, regardless. Second court is, the way it's done there is second court usually says not guilty with bail. The people are expected to pay a great deal of money and leave. Anyway, this particular man did go in with a smaller amount the second time and got his son, and his son did phone, I think, Lynette's mother.
Mind you, the fact that the embassy has been so close in liaison with the Bangkok Police Commission might even close that door.
Oh, that door is closed as a result of those letters, I'm sure. That's why nothing was mentioned. These letters have been in existence. I personally don't have any copies of them, I'd like to point out, but these letters have been in existence and known about since for some substantial period of time, but they were never brought up until we wanted the judicial process in Thailand to take its course without any interference. But because of the process that Darlene has so accurately described a few moments ago, we thought this should be brought to the public's attention.
What about the hunger strike he was on? I read somewhere about Barry being on hunger
Yes,
strike.
he was. He is, no, I got a letter from him dated September 14th the other day, and he said that he felt he owed it to his family not to be another Bobby Sands or whatever. He said he did what he set out to do, which was to get attention so that these letters would, that Globe and Mail or whatever would print them. Because last summer, before the trial, Barry told me about the letters and asked what I thought, and I thought that he should expose them, and so he asked me to bring in CBS reporter. It was Mr. David Hatcher who came in and spoke to Barry, but Mr. Hatcher wasn't able to get these letters out. Globe and Mail at that time in Toronto weren't interested, and CTV, I guess the technicians were on strike or something, so they couldn't do anything, though they expressed interest in it. So this way Barry brought attention.
It's a popular cause for the human being. I mean, one, if he were guilty, he wouldn't have got life imprisonment for it in Canada. Two, he would have a fair trial. Three, he would have had a proper appeal. Now what do you think your brother faces now?
Well, unless he can get an appeal, he's got life.
And that means life, does it?
The only other way is is by pleading guilty, changing his plea to guilty, and a sentence will be cut down to 50 years.
Yes.
50 years.
50.
If you plead guilty in Thailand, no matter when, even after you're convicted and sentenced, if you come up and decide to plead guilty, then they cut it in half. The whole system is geared for you to plead guilty and quit bothering them.
Travel tips to Thailand. Don't go.
Especially a young individual. I knew one young German girl there that was...
Wonder, maybe we should try. Keep my guests a little while longer, in case there's anyone with similar experiences. Let's try a few phone calls. Doesn't work, I won't stay long on it. After the break. Robert Allan, who appeared in Thailand for this Canadian fellow from Calgary and Seychelles who's doing life unfairly, they claim. He's lawyer. Lynette, sister. How old are you?
28.
28. You certainly don't look it. Darlene Paulson, close friend. How did you manage to stay in Thailand without getting framed?
Because I was staying with missionary friends from our church, and they had been involved in helping other prisoners there. And I stayed with them, and the Thais have great respect for religion, and the minister I stayed with has been there 8 years, and he knows Thai very well. And
More
knows their
travel
customs.
tips. If you're going to stay in and around Bangkok, for God's sake, stay with a missionary.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
If you're on the topic, go ahead.
Hello.
That's you.
Yes. I've been to Thailand about 6 times, and I've never had a problem there. I know that if there is problems that go on, for one thing, Thai girls will plant drugs in your room, and you know, you go along with whatever happens. It's similar to Mexico. You can pay your way out of everything, but I don't seem to have any problems when I go over there. I'm going over there again next month.
Well, stay away from anybody who's close to drugs and check your suitcase every time you go in and out your room. Eh?
Yeah.
Good advice. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Webster, I'm calling with regard to your program, and I would like, first of all, it seems to be rather a one-sided affair. We've had dealings with the External Affairs Department that involved a member of my family, and I'd like to say first that I can surely sympathize with Mr. Ackerman's sisters for the problems that they're going through.
What's your problem?
Well, the problem is that we were directly involved with Barry Ackerman.
Ah.
Another case, and which resulted in my daughter being thrown in jail in France because she was transporting drugs at the age of 18 for Mr. Barry Ackerman.
Now, just a minute. We're getting into a delicate area here, aren't we?
I realize we are, but I think that
I mean, it's not delicate enough for me to get nervous about it, but when did this happen?
in 1976,
76. Where is your daughter now?
my daughter is here in Canada.
Was she charged and convicted with transporting drugs?
Yes, she was.
In France or in Canada?
France.
What did she get?
She got 1 year.
And are you alleging that she was associated with Ackerman?
I'm alleging that it was Mr. Ackerman.
Well, they'll leave the rest of the allegation, but you say that she knew Ackerman. Hold on a second. I'll take your name and number off the air, but just let me handle it my way, and then I'll feel more at ease. Are you aware of this incident, Robert Allan?
No.
No.
Lynette?
No.
Was he in France in 76?
I don't know.
You don't know. You haven't known him for
know.
that long.
I've known him 12 years.
Anyway, what you're saying is don't be too sympathetic to Ackerman, is that right?
Exactly, because my daughter wasn't the only one that was involved with him over.
Okay, I'll take your remark as responsible and accurate. I trust you are accurate.
I am accurate.
You're prepared to give me the names off the air?
Yes, I am.
Have you anything which links the two together in any court proceedings?
Will you repeat that, please?
Have you anything which, for instance, when your daughter was tried, was he a witness?
He was not a witness. He just left her in the lurch.
Well, hold on. You've made what seems to be a valid point, and Mr. Allan doesn't know of this incident. Nor do you. How about you, Lynette?
No.
Oddly enough, those letters from the RCMP don't reflect any alleged trafficking in France.
In France, no. They say a
Everywhere
major
but France.
narcotic trafficker in Canada. Would you hold on, sir? Now, do not go away,
Yes, I will.
because I'll lose you. That's the chance that you take an open line show, isn't that the... Webster, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Webster.
Yes.
I know of a case where, I think it was Venezuela in 1978, where I think it was an Australian girl was murdered by the police there, and the government covered it up. what your guests are putting forward today is a similar type of scenario that happens often in Turkey, Mexico, throughout the third world. And I would, to be brief, suggest that the reluctance of the Canadian Embassy to help them in any of these instances would be the stance of the Trudeau government, which is so pro-third world. And to prove the point, if Mr. Ackerman was in prison in South Africa, I bet Trudeau's government would have him out so quick, it'd make their heads spin.
Hey, that might be a valid point.
We did try to. We sent. My sister actually phoned Trudeau's office and spoke to his secretary last week before we went to Korea, asking him if he would try to do something in the exchange program, and we haven't heard any more. But
You're not likely to hear much more either. Thank you for your call, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
I personally, I read the article in the paper about this Ackerman fella, and I maybe I might sound a little harsh, but I don't have any sympathy at all for people that, according to the paper, he's been involved in heroin since 1956. And I think that, like I've been working as a welder since 1950s, and if you go out on a limb and start playing around with heroin or fooling around, I think that you should face the facts that there's no mercy from anybody. And if I was into heroin dealing, I'd expect that if I got caught in Thailand or anywhere else, I'd get shot because I could read the Queen's English and I'm quite aware of what the laws are in those countries.
You've got to face that attitude, which many people have, especially in this country, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, you have to, and I think that I've done a lot of drug cases, and a lot of individuals who've been admittedly involved in drugs are very realistic about it. The point here is not really whether Barry Ackerman was involved in drugs in Thailand or not. The point is the Canadian Embassy interfered with with his right to have that determined by a court of law in Thailand, is my position.
If there was a Thai person in Canada, we wouldn't change our legal system to accommodate their beliefs either.
Oh, no, but we would give them, if necessary, in most cases, legal aid, and they would get all the protections of our rules of evidence, wouldn't they?
I would.
Excuse me, 2 points. Number one, in 1956, Barry was about 9 years old. And the second point is that I talked to a lady who was a missionary in Burma, excuse me, and there is a Thai prisoner in Canada. I don't know his name or the details, but I'm sure it could be found out. And they asked, the Canadian government asked if he wanted to go back to Thailand, and he refused.
He said no.
He said he would, I mean, the living conditions here in prison are better than how he would live normally at home.
Thanks for your point, sir. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I'd just like to comment on the involvement of the RCMP in another foreign case.
Yes?
It happened in Amsterdam, I guess in the middle of the 1970s, and a man from Vancouver here and his wife were traveling and leaving Amsterdam, and they were arrested, and he was charged with possession of heroin. And when it did come up in court, there was, I'm not sure, but I know there was one, maybe two RCMP officers present in court that day testifying against him. Just personal opinions on this man, not really legal documents or anything were presented, but just their personal opinion. We suspect this man of being involved in drugs in Vancouver. He's, known to do this and that, and just trying to sway the evidence against him. And as it turned out, well, Dutch law is being lenient. He did only receive a year in jail, and his wife was also charged. She did a year in jail in their home now. But they really tried their hardest to see him get big.
What the woman's saying is that the RCMP who testify in foreign countries will take perhaps proper advantage of the form of evidence which is allowed in those countries.
Well, that's right. I would like to point out that a large number of RCMP officers that I've been involved with are very fair and impartial in their evidence here. I'm only stressing that in this particular case there was a very strong desire on the part of either the Canadian government or the RCMP or something to have Mr. Ackerman in jail. And again, they did take, very strong advantage of the rather
Okay,
loose
let's
system.
wrap it up with this. What's your next step?
Well, we're walking in the dark at the moment.
Next step.
we are. We're just hoping that maybe
Something will happen. Mother and father still alive?
Yes, they are.
In Calgary. It's dicey to go back, and you need a lot of money to go back.
Yeah.
Well, you got to raise money for food. They won't get any, will they?
Well, we're working, and we're sending it,
Well, my thanks to you, Lynette, Darlene, and to Robert Allan. It's another side of life which a lot of people don't appreciate. Travel tips to Thailand. Don't go.
Thank you.
If anything happens in this, I'll let you know after the break. I forget what I told them on the board there, but anyway, yesterday on the program with Grace McCarthy, there was mention of a problem at Mary Hill Private Hospital in connection with the care of adult retarded. That is Mary Hill Private Hospital. Been operating for a number of years with a maximum of 23 patients funded by Human Resources. Policy of the department seems to be now not to keep people in such large units. And Grace McCarthy made some remarks about it yesterday on the program. These are some of the people in the Mary Hill Hospital. Now, just to get myself into focus if nobody else is in focus, yesterday when I was doing the program with Grace McCarthy, up came a telephone call from a woman who is now in my studio, who is Mrs. Margaret Varcoe, the matron of Mary Hill Private Hospital. With her is Hal Salway, who's the administrator and owner. Now, it was quite a bright telephone call, which, as you will see 15 seconds from now, created a little contretemps between Mrs. Varcoe and Grace McCarthy. And I'm going to give you the exact interchange so that we can settle down and discuss the subject with the
I'm the matron of Mary Hill, and I'm afraid it's a very emotional thing. These people are going to die, some of them. And how you can live with this on your conscience.
Okay, but I'm going to just stop you right there because I don't want you to put onto me or anybody in my ministry that we are going to force people to die. That's an unfair statement from you as a professional, and you know better than that. And I'm going to say this to you. As a professional in your field, you also know that there are some people in that hospital who are very elderly and some people who are younger, and that mix, according to our regional manager and according to the professional advice that I have had, is not a good mix.
Now, that brings us back to the problem. We can start at the beginning. What you said yesterday was that Grace McCarthy was going to cause some people to die, or the Human Resources was, and she took particular objection to that. Now, as I know, and we all know, the form of care for certain types of people has changed very radically in recent years. There was one time when Riverview was jammed with people who are now out in halfway houses. And then we came to this development where you've had, for how many years, how many adult retarded?
Our license is for 23.
23.
But for the past 4 years, we've had no more than 18 to 20.
How long have you been at Mary Hill?
5 years.
All right. When did Mary Hill, Mr. Salway, go into the business of looking after adult retarded instead of being a, quote, private hospital as such?
It was a gradual transition. We opened in 1958. I would say probably in the late 60s we started taking residents from Woodlands School when they were trying to move people out of Woodlands. And that's where most of the people that are there now came from.
We're probably all agreed that the transfer of people from Woodlands into smaller settings was a good step in the right direction.
It is a good step. It's a fantastic step, what they're doing with the younger people now. But the point at Mary Hill, these people are beyond that. And there are a lot more of them that are presently housed in private nursing homes, and they don't mix with the ordinary elderly person. They have no tolerance for them. The point that we're trying to point out to Mrs. McCarthy is that reverse this trend, relieve some of these long-term care beds with your chronic brain syndromes and your middle-aged and elderly handicapped that are presently taking up good long-term care beds.
Now, you have how many patients now? You had maximum 23. What ages are they?
40 to 90. The youngest is 40, and I have two 90-year-olds. Now, Mrs. McCarthy pointed out yesterday that as a professional, I should know that they don't mix. They do mix. Our younger ones keep the older ones going. They love doing things for them.
Now, it seems to be Mrs. McCarthy's policy that she wants to put, or her officials advise her, to be fair to her, that it's better to put these adult retarded in smaller units between, I think somebody said 6 and 10 in a housing unit. And your place has been regarded, place of which you're the matron, has been regarded as too big.
They told us that our people would be going to group homes, but this isn't what's happening. This is what has got the 6 families, there's only 6 families of the relatives of the patients of Mary Hill. The rest of them, unfortunately, have nobody but me.
Right.
And it's the relatives that have started this, contacting the media. They've contacted Bannerman, they've contacted the Vancouver show. They don't want their people moved because they feel, excuse me, that they get above average care.
They are a family now.
They are a family, and what they are doing is breaking up a family. And this family unit, I'll call it a family unit, is well accepted in the town of Port Coquitlam. Our folk are downtown to the local stores, to the local Dairy Queen, to the shopping centers.
No problems at all.
No problems whatsoever. The neighbors, the children in the neighborhood, they're always in there playing, you know, around the side. There's a big porch on the side.
Do you think somebody made an arbitrary decision when they should have made an exception on your size hospital?
The whole point, I believe, is that most of our folk, because they are of long-term care age, for medical reasons and of age, belong in long-term care beds to be funded by long-term care.
Officially.
Officially.
Under policy.
Right, but why can't Mary Hill, that department, pick up the ones that they're responsible for, and Human Resources pick up the ones that they're responsible
Grace seemed
for?
to be quite inflexible about it yesterday, and I suppose she's got to accept the advice of officials in some occasions. But let's look at the money. Is this a well cared for building?
The building is pretty well cared for considering its age. We've had excellent reports from the hospital inspector, the fire marshal. It's fully sprinkled. It's a very safe building. I'd say it's in good shape.
All right. Would you get more money if it was a long-term care home than a home for adult retarded?
No, the funding is identical. The Department of Human Resources earlier last year, and we thought our battle was over, agreed to pay the long-term care rates.
Oh, you thought you had that battle over when?
Last spring.
When was the change made? You mean this spring, this year?
Well, this
past spring.
about a year ago, we had applied for rate changes, and they granted them to us, and we thought we were home free, and then we got a visit from the regional manager, and they indicated they wanted to bring us down to a smaller unit. It was not economic from what they wanted in the way of services. And so we told them, well, we couldn't survive with that kind of staffing for that many people. And so they said, fine, I guess you're going to quit then, and we'll phase you out by 1st of
let me get
January.
this. When they said, okay, long-term rates, they looked at it, they wanted you to increase the staffing.
They wanted us to keep, the letter that I've got said 10 full-time staff for 6 to 8 people, or 8 to 10 people.
Is that right?
Well,
10
Mr.
full-time
Salway does
staff.
For 8 to 10 people.
For 8 to 10 people. What kind of funding do you get, if I can be so nosy, per person there, roughly speaking?
We're receiving somewhere, it varies according to their assessment, but it's between $32 and $43 per diem.
Well, if we say $35 per diem, that's about $1,000 a month. That's about $16,000 a month. 200,000 a year, gross.
Something like that.
Can you make a profit on that?
We're breaking even right now.
Right now. Do you anticipate that Human Resources is going to move in and arbitrarily move people out from the 16 who are
I've
left?
lost 2. Now, we have asked the Ombudsman's office to look into this.
Super government. He's going to have a bigger staff soon than the provincial government.
As far as I know, I've been told that they have written the ministries, but they couldn't tell me what was in the letter, that they had written the ministries, but we should have some feedback on that within a week.
I don't think it's going to do with the Ombudsman. I think it's a matter of government policy or administrative decision whereby you've got to convince a politician that it's going to be bad for his political image if he doesn't continue to use Mary Hill and Coquitlam. That's the only way you can get at them.
Well, we can't seem to reach anybody.
If you're right. I wish I had known about this in advance yesterday, but I had such a long vacation in the summer I was out of touch. I'll be back after the break. This is probably the last gasp in an individual campaign by the owners and the matron of Mary Hill Private Hospital in Coquitlam, who for how many years, I've forgotten, have you run for adult retarded? 5?
5 or 10.
for a good number of years, have operated this private hospital to care for the needs of ambulatory adult retarded who were moved out under the policy of some years ago from Woodlands. Am I correct in that?
That's right.
I'm correct in that. And they are protesting, they feel in the name of the community and the name of the relatives, the decision further to move these people between 40 and 90 out into smaller home care units.
They're not moving them to smaller home care units. The two that have left are in a 22-bed nursing home in New Westminster, which the house square footage is smaller than ours. And there is another one apparently slated to go there, but I haven't. The other people that came to contact...
Have there any complaints against your establishment at all?
None that I can see.
We've got a whole swatch of reports here.
That's that's a letter from Mr.
That's
Barrett.
a letter from Barrett. Fire inspection, very good, clean state.
Those are the late...
No recommendation to be made at this time except to keep up the good work from BCHIS.
It's from the government hospital inspector.
Yeah, your interest in their welfare is noted in the physical improvements that you have made, as well as the quality of life that you have engendered, and wish to commend you and your staff for excellent care.
This is the most recent.
The most recent one. Commended for work. Menus have improved. Meals very good. Pleasure to see many sitting up in a dining room for their meals. Housekeeping very good. Quality of life very good. Oh, you're now suggesting to me something else. You're suggesting to me that your people are being taken out of the satisfactory home and put in similar private hospitals with more people. Is that right?
That's right. There was a matron from a boarding home in Abbotsford who incidentally has turned them down because none of my people will fit in a boarding home. And that was for 35 beds. Now that is not a group home either. These group homes that Mrs. McCarthy was talking about, none of the Maryhill patients are slated to go there.
Human resources staff have argued that the hospital doesn't fit into the new models of treatment for retarded. I thought yours were being closed. Yours is being kind of squeezed out so that these people go into small 4- and 6-unit homes.
That's what we thought in the beginning, and this is what has started this, excuse me, controversy, is that this isn't what's being done.
In other words, just switching them from one private hospital to another.
I can accept if we can't supply a better lifestyle for them going to group homes because it betters them. But this isn't what's happening.
It's part of the reason why I was rather agreeable in negotiating with them, because this is what they told me, that they were going to smaller homes, better facilities, newer facilities. They would have all kinds of
and suddenly find that two of your long-term patients finish up in another private hospital in New Westminster.
I have one lady that will be 65 October the 28th. Now that's her eligibility for long-term care, and that's that date, I feel I'm going to get a phone call. She goes.
Tell me about the ones that have been there 17 years. I know you were quite emotional about it yesterday when you said that some people might die. What were you talking about?
The ones I'm concerned about is my 90-year-olds. One of the 90-year-old ladies is an alcoholic brain syndrome who has been there 14 years. She is a very stubborn, self-opinionated lady, and she doesn't know anything about this, and I fear that when I walk into her and say, you have to move, no matter how I present it to her, I'm afraid she's going to have a heart attack if I start talking up. And another case I did see, I've been accused by the Human Resources Department that it depends how Mrs. Varcoe presents this to the patients, whether it will be traumatic or not. Now, the first one that moved, I thought we won't tell her till 24 hours before. Then she doesn't have to worry about it. She went out with the attitude that I did this personally.
Threw her out?
I didn't love her and I was throwing her out. Okay? So I thought, well, maybe that's wrong. Maybe I should start implanting it now, and by the time it comes, they'll have it accepted. So the one particular, another chronic brain syndrome, has a very flowery history and a very flowery language. And when I suggested to her that we had to move, all of us had to move, including me, to a nice new place, she picked up her walker and threw it at me. Now if I even bring, say, Sylvia, I get that far, and she just I won't repeat what she says, but it's very flowery.
Well, there's no point in me pointing fun at the regional director in Westminster because he wouldn't go on the air with me anyway.
Well, he's not, the regional director that did this is now no longer working for the Human Resources Department.
The regional director that did what?
Made the decision for this. Now,
You mean to end your
right.
funding?
Now, he has told Gary Bannerman that he was telling, following orders, that he had nothing to do with this. It was a Victorian decision. Now, Mr. Salway, as I understand, has been told by Victoria that it was entirely a regional director's decision. So
It's
somebody...
not. I can tell you right now, it's a policy decision, but what you're really facing is the fact that the policy is not being followed through. If it should tell me it's correct that 2 of your long-term patients are going to be transferred into another private hospital, and that doesn't make much sense. Now, have Leggett and Koch done anything active for you?
He's trying.
I mean, where are they? Where are Leggett and Koch? Why don't they fight it?
Mr. Koch this morning is on on the boat
Doesn't
to
matter.
Victoria.
No, it doesn't matter. But it's the duty of Leggett and Koch, as they support your position, to be right on the back of the administrators in New Westminster saying, look, these people are not going to smaller homes. You're wrecking the lifestyle and you're putting them into other private hospitals which may or may not be as good. And the only way you'll get a decision now is by Koch and Leggett doing their job with McCarthy and John Noble and Victoria. It's the only way.
I spoke to Mr. Leggett last week, and he has not been able to get Grace McCarthy face
Well,
to
you
face.
see, this is where I get annoyed at MLAs. It is their job.
I feel they are trying.
The Ombudsman can't do a damn thing. It's not his. I mean, he's spreading himself so thin, looking after everybody in the country. He's going to finish up with 18,000 instead of 18 investigators, and will annoy everybody in the interim period. But I'm glad you came. I understand the position now. I will have a word with Grace McCarthy on it, but the people who should do it, Stu Leggett and Dennis Koch, it's been hanging around long enough.
Can I indicate what I think a proper solution should be for this whole thing?
Sure.
I think we should get away from human resources as far as we can. It really should be the responsibility of long-term care, and all they have to do is allow us into the long-term care program. We would then be able to continue as we are. We would be able to bring the beds up to an economic standard of occupancy.
But in the meantime, they shouldn't
problems.
be taking your people away and putting them in a private hospital.
That's correct.
Long-term care, that's probably the answer.
And I have applied again to the long-term care program, Dr. Blatherwick, for a meeting to consider bringing us into the long-term care program.
Good. Let me know what happens.
Sure will.
Thanks very much to Salway and Matron Varcoe from Maryhill Private Hospital, which is still running with 16 patients.
We're still trying.
Still trying. I'll be back with a free-for-all after the break. Before I forget, there's a couple of things that you've asked me about. One, the Webster rebroadcast is on Channel 6, just after News Hour final on that first-class, wonderful, excellent station. Well, they use it. I'm going to give them a good plug. And I enjoy, I get up in the middle of the night. I'm not the world's best sleeper. And I punch up to see what I've been doing. And of course, I shudder, because I always see the questions I didn't ask or some silly thing I had done. Tomorrow I've got a very good program for you. I was out yesterday at one of our institutions. I'm not that keen on going out to institutions. But this is a guy who went public a while ago about his problems as a rapist. Now, it's not any kind of sleazy program. It's not any prurient program. It's a straightforward Webster cross-examination of a chap who's doing time for rape. We'll also have on the same program, God and the arrangements willing, one of the system's psychiatrists. I'm going to show you this interview, the Webster interview, and then we'll have a bit of a chat about this problem of sex offenders. That's one thing I've got in my mind. Otherwise, I haven't had a free-for-all since I got back. I've still got some stuff to use from Scotland and England. And I'm going to slot it in a program one morning, otherwise we'll never use it. It's quite good, but it's not hard-nosed stuff. It's me playing golf. I've been told off about having too many ethnic programs already. Ethnic Scotch, that is. And to tell you the truth, I get a bit fed up with them myself. But I'm going to go for a free-for-all. Free-for-all. for all. Switch to camera 2. Free for all. Good. Quicker over there. You're slow. God, you've only got to move your finger and push a button. It's so simple, this business, you know. Camera 1, camera 2. I'm to blame. I'm supposed to follow their leads, but I don't. That's why I'm different. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am, speak up.
Yes, I was listening to your discussion on Mary Hill, and I work at Valley View, and I've been there for about a year, and they've been cutting our patients way back, and the government just seems to be not caring at all about any of our geriatric patients or any of the disabled at all.
Valley View was the best old folks home in this province for many long years.
It is, but they are cutting back our patients.
How many empty beds have you got in Valley View?
At least a couple of hundred. In this year alone, they cut 2 wards. They closed them down completely.
Wonder how many empty wards there are in Riverview. There was one talk at one time of putting a nurses training school in there.
Yeah, but they haven't done so yet. I mean, we have 2, 4...
Is it because civil servants are too expensive? Is that the reasoning?
I don't know. It's just government cutbacks all the way, you know, like if they've got to cut back anything, that's where they're going to cut back.
Tell me, was the old Valley View an impersonal place that's not as good, say, as a smaller unit?
It could be.
A little bit institutional, eh?
Yeah, it is. But I mean, still, like our patients that we get aggressive patients, and I mean, there's a long waiting list, but they just cut back and don't let these people in.
I had thought that we were making real progress in the terms of long-term care, but maybe we're not.
I don't think so.
You've got enough staff at Valley View now for the patients you have, I presume.
Yeah, we do.
Still have the hairdressers and whatnot?
Yeah.
And the food's good out there?
Yeah, the food's really good, and we have everything that we need out there, you know, to care for the patients, and I think we do a very good job.
Look, I'm glad you called me. I'm just getting back into the saddle again right now, as they say in the Western songs. And we'll have a look at that.
That's good. I'm glad, because we have 6 empty wards. And
yeah, send Steve out to take some shots of the empty wards. But then again, you're on this problem that when there was such a public backlash against large, formal, antiseptic-smelling institutions.
Well, I mean, there's a place for them, and a lot of our patients just can't function on the outside, even in a nursing care home. They just wouldn't function there.
Good girl. Thanks for putting me on my toes a little bit more.
Thank you.
Much obliged.
Okay.
Good morning to Whitehorse.
Good morning, Jack. I picked up a week ago last Sunday night a news broadcast from my home county in Ontario, which is County Bruce. And there's a nuclear reactor at a place called Kincardine in Huron, which is right there.
Yeah.
And there was one small blurb, just a tiny announcement a week ago, Sunday night news, that the reactor there had spilt 9 metric tons of heavy water, losing 1.5 tons of it. And that's all I've heard about the thing. And I was wondering if it had melted or why the media wasn't covering it.
No, if it's heavy water, I don't know what form heavy water takes. I presume it's heavy water.
Well, it's
used in the making of...
for cooling the reactors.
Cooling the reactors.
Radioactive parts in the heavy water. It's the active ingredient of a hydroelectric nuclear generator.
I have not... I remember seeing a story in one of the Eastern papers about it, but I don't think there's been any follow on it.
No, there's been absolutely nothing. I was wondering whether it melted or...
No, nothing like that, I don't think. How's the weather in Whitehorse?
Pardon?
How's the weather in Whitehorse?
Oh, it's snowing a little bit just now, just dribs and drabs, you know.
Well, keep watching Webster, and that'll warm you up.
That's good. Goodbye.
Bye. Couldn't have been a big spill. Yes. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Webster.
Yes, ma'am.
I felt that was a good, thought-provoking talk this morning, but why not...
Just a minute. Nobody told me my collar wasn't fastened this morning.
Pardon?
Nobody told me my collar has been fastened.
Oh.
Frame that in a bit tighter, will you? I look better to hear.
Get Grace McCarthy and the Matron on your program before this thing, dies down.
I wish I'd done it yesterday with Grace. I didn't do it properly with Grace yesterday.
You did it very well, and I thought she felt it was responsible too, but obviously there's some lack of communication between her and her ministries, eh?
Yeah, you've got to balance, though, the properly selfish interests of the owners of the hospital against the proper requirements of the members of the public. And you know, as you get older, things get less black and white. They become more gray.
I was thinking, if the owner can get the long-term care, that's fine. But you know what, I'm interested in listening to you, and I think maybe you're a real do-gooder. Where would you really be able to place, now if this thing goes through, do you think perhaps the fact that you had those people on is the reason that some of these success stories happen?
Yes.
I do too. So therefore, I want to commend you on that. But on the other hand, sometimes you feel a little bit like a rabble-rouser when things are brought out. Now tomorrow with the rapist thing, this is going to be...
Yeah, I'll look like an old redneck tomorrow. All the do-gooders will be clobbering me.
Well, I certainly think that you have the right idea. I think, in a sense, you're an ombudsman too, eh?
Yeah.
You know, because you're bringing out these things.
And I don't have 18 staff and $10 million and the right to barge in either.
I'm wondering, who's going to come out looking good, the NDP government or social credit? I wonder. If the thing goes through long-term, it'll be the social credit, eh?
I think the difference between them is a hair's breadth half the time.
Is that right?
Yeah, I don't think there's an awful lot of difference between the two of them.
No.
But I'm getting a wee bit cheesed off at the ombudsman. I'll have to have him back soon again.
I know, because he has some powers, but he really doesn't have that much.
He's got lots of powers, but if there's a story that's going to create a lot of publicity for him, wham, he's in with both feet.
I understood
Grates
Alan
his
Williams
finger.
more or less used him as just a Joe boy.
Who?
Alan Williams. Remember when he had certain powers? Now
No. Williams merely challenges his right to see certain documents.
yeah, well, that's what
But what I'm afraid about the ombudsman is that while this guy may be absolutely first class, we're going to have another bleeding bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Another $50 million a year. Another in terminal investigations. Everything goes on forever.
Right.
By the time you're in your wee box,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, there won't be anybody working for themselves. We'll all be civil servants. After the break. I feel a bit funny, and no wonder I'm upside down. You see what it's done to my hair. But this proves that Stan Blackwood, one of my colleagues over here, doesn't know up from down, never did know up from down. Come in and brush my hair, Pamela. Look at that. Hang me upside down by my heels and my hair goes in a handbasket. More gently, please. Don't forget my wave. Right? Get that camera up a bit and hide my double chin. Come on. Up a bit. Hide that double chin. Frame me from here. Look much better. Come on, in a bit. Does that not look better? I look a bit pasty-faced this morning. The makeup's wrong. Good morning.
Yes, Mr. Webster, on...
We weren't on the air just now, were we? Yes, go ahead, sir.
On interest, I understand that the Royal Bank is...
Camera one.
Is going to add on the extra interest onto the principal.
Let me put it to you, sir. I had a very tight, sharp interview with Cosgrove yesterday. And he conceded to me that the banks, in fact, are going to do nothing except be very careful about foreclosures. But what they will do in cases, they'll look at every individual hardship case. They say, you know how generous the banks are. Lovely people. Oh, my goodness. They're just dripping smarm and sympathy and little bonuses for you. But what they'll do is what credit unions have always done. When somebody gets into a real mess up with a mortgage and you can't make it and you haven't made your payments, they will capitalize the overdue interest and put it on your principal. Similarly, they will in effect buy down for you your payments but put up your capital amount to be repaid at an 18% level. Expect nothing from the banks. The best thing that Cosgrove said yesterday in a reasonable way was that after yesterday's program, he will consider being more generous with the non-high-risk mortgages under the CMHC levels. And more people might, God help them, get 19 3/4 mortgages instead of 23% mortgages, which is the rate at the moment if you are a high-risk ratio borrower. But it's quite obvious that nobody can do very much about interest rates or anything else, and I don't know what else to add.
Well, the point that I was going to bring out was that they might as well take it away from you now, because if they keep adding it on to the principal and you paying that high interest rate on the add-on, that's just a way of getting it down the line a year later or 6 months later.
Old people, people over 65, should not hesitate to take advantage of the provincial law which allows them to defer taxes as a charge, I think it's now at 11%, against the eventual sale of the house after the death of the two partners. A very good thing for old people to do.
Could you say that again for me?
If you're over 65 in British Columbia, you can defer your taxes on your property. They become a charge against your property.
Right.
The amount is compounded, I think, at 11%, and many old people don't do it out of a sense of pride. If they've got the money to pay their taxes, that's fine. If they're finding they're going tough, they should not hesitate to defer their taxes beyond the age of 65.
Oh, that's good news.
And I believe it's also a case that if you're 65 or over and the widow is under 65, if the man dies first, the widow, even though she is under 65, still benefits from the deferment of taxes until the estate is finally disposed of. Thank you, sir, for your call. Good morning.
Good morning, Jack. I am an ex-homemaker, and I'm very interested in this long-term care bit, and I'd just like to fill you in how we were cut back. We used to go into a place for 4 hours. All of a sudden, we have to go in for 2. Do exactly the same thing in 2 hours that we were doing in 4. Now, I thought the whole thought of this homemaker bit was to keep our old people happy, keep them in their own homes. Well, now, they just can't do that because a lot of them have to have meals cooked. There's no way you can go into a place for 2 hours.
Okay, hold it. I accept your point. I agree to your point. The health budget is now well over $1 billion.
Yeah.
There are many families in this province who are taking advantage of home care because they don't help the old folks themselves. And you know as well as I do. There are some real tragedy cases who have been cut down, but there are other cases where the families have left the entire care of their aged relatives or their ailing relatives to the state. Now, if everybody finally says, we want everything done for us for nothing, nothing will be done for anyone.
Yeah, but wait a minute. This is a very mobile age, and a lot of people don't have relatives here. I mean, look at the people that come out here to retire.
Well, that's maybe an unfair load on one particular province. That could be. I'm saying it's bad that there are cutbacks in home care, but I'm saying that somebody along the line has got to make a balance. Thank you for your call, and I shall be back after the break. Considerable public interest in how one handles sex offenders is quite visible in this province. Tomorrow morning you're going to meet a man who wants to talk, who's doing sentence for rape in British Columbia. It's a straightforward interview, examines his motives, his possibilities of a cure. Tomorrow on Webster at 9 a.m. precisely.